The day was hot, the kind of heat that made the road shimmer like water. Dust rose each time a car rolled past, and the small-town diner sat quiet under the bright sun, its old wooden sign creaking in the wind. But that day there was something unusual, something that made people slow their steps and whisper. A woman sat under the diner's help wanted sign. She was not like anyone the town had ever seen. Her skin had a faint silver glow, almost like moonlight. Her eyes, wide and sharp, shone with a strange blue fire. Her clothes were torn, a mixture of fabric and metallic strips as if built from scraps of another world. And in her hands she held a small broken device, pressing it as if it was her last hope. Children hiding behind their parents pointed at her. "Is she real?" One boy asked. "Don't stare," his mother hissed, pulling him away, but they kept looking back, their fear mixing with curiosity. Hours passed, the woman did not move. Except to shield her face from the burning sun, she did not beg, she did not shout. She only sat in silence, waiting. The townsfolk grew restless. Some laughed nervously, calling her a trick, a performer, a robot in costume. Others crossed the street just to avoid passing near her, and yet she remained still and patient, as if she had nowhere else to go by evening. Her shadow stretched long across the dirt. The smell of frying food drifted from the diner, but her stomach made no sound. Still she sat, her glowing eyes watching the door as if waiting for someone to open it. A group of teenagers rode by on bikes, circling her. One threw a small rock. It bounced off the ground near her feet. "Careful, she'll eat you," another shouted. The woman flinched but said nothing. Her grip tightened on the broken device. The boys laughed until an old man chased them off. Shaking his head, by now people whispered stories. "She's dangerous," some said. "She's lost," others argued. "No," another voice muttered. "She's hunting." Fear grew like a storm cloud over the little town, and yet no one dared to speak to her. The diner's neon lights flickered on as night approached. The woman's silver skin glimmered softly under the glow. She looked weak, but her eyes still burned with determination. It was clear she was waiting for something, or someone finally. When most had given up staring, a man stepped forward. His name was Daniel, a mechanic who lived on the edge of town. He had been watching quietly all day. Unlike the others, he did not see a monster. He saw a stranger, hungry, tired, and alone, and something about her reminded him of his own loneliness. The empty rooms in his house since his wife had passed. He walked closer. Every head turned, whispers followed him. "Don't do it, Daniel," someone muttered, but he ignored them, his boots crunching against gravel. He stopped in front of her, just a few feet away. The woman raised her eyes to him, for the first time all day. Her lips parted. Her voice was soft, broken, almost human. "Help?" she whispered, just one word, trembling, carrying all the weight of her suffering. Daniel stared at her, his heart heavy. Up close, he saw the truth. Her skin bore scars, her hands trembled not from anger but exhaustion. She was not here to hurt anyone. She was here because she had nowhere else to go. "Why are you waiting here?" Daniel asked quietly. The woman blinked, clutching the broken device to her chest, her voice cracked. "Work, food, safe." Each word was forced, as if she had learned only fragments of his language. Daniel took a deep breath. He could hear the whispers behind him growing louder. "Don't trust her," they said. "She's lying," others warned. But he looked back into her glowing eyes and saw not danger, but desperation. The sky darkened, stars beginning to shine. The woman's silver skin shimmered faintly under the night, and Daniel felt a decision forming in his chest, a choice that no one else in town dared to make. The whole street waited, holding its breath. Would he walk away like everyone else had, or would he do something different, something dangerous? Daniel's hand twitched at his side, his jaw clenched. Then slowly, he stepped closer. The crowd gasped, and Daniel spoke the words that would change both their lives forever. "Come with me," he said. The woman's glowing eyes widened. For the first time all day, her lips curved into the smallest fragile smile, and the town would never forget the moment the human reached out his hand, and the alien took it. Daniel's words hung in the air like thunder. The people standing nearby froze, their eyes wide with shock. No one had expected him to say it. No one had expected him to invite her, the alien woman, Solara, as she would later whisper her name, looked at Daniel with disbelief. Her silver skin glowed faintly in the moonlight, her eyes reflecting both fear and hope. For a moment she did not move, as if she was afraid it was a trick. The silence was heavy, broken only by the soft hum of the diner's sign and the restless murmurs of the crowd. "Are you crazy, Daniel?" a man shouted from across the street. "She doesn't belong here," another woman hissed, pulling her child behind her. "She's not human. She could kill you in your sleep." One voice rang out in panic, but Daniel didn't flinch. He stood tall, his gaze locked on the strange woman who had sat all day waiting for kindness that never came. Solara slowly pushed herself up from the ground, her knees shaking. The broken device she held slipped from her hands. Landing in the dirt, Daniel bent down and picked it up, brushing it clean before handing it back. Her fingers trembled as they closed around it. For the first time, her voice broke the air again, soft and cracked. "Safe?" she asked, as if she could not believe such a thing existed. Daniel gave a small nod. "Safe with me," he said firmly. The crowd erupted in whispers and protests. "This is madness," one man growled. "She's baiting him," another muttered. But no one dared to step forward. No one dared to stop him. Daniel offered his hand. For a long moment, Solara stared at it, her glowing eyes wide. Then, slowly, as if she was afraid of being burned, she placed her hand in his. Her skin was cool to the touch, lighter than he expected. The moment their hands touched, a hush fell over the street. The scene was burned into the memory of every witness, the human and the alien standing side by side under the diner's flickering sign. Daniel turned to lead her away. As they walked past the staring eyes, Solara stumbled slightly. Without hesitation, Daniel steadied her, his arm firm under her shoulder. The crowd parted reluctantly. No one daring to block their path, Solara kept her head lowered, her glowing eyes hidden from the stares. And Daniel walked tall, though inside his chest his heart pounded like a drum. By the time they reached his small truck, whispers had followed them like shadows. "Fool," someone muttered. "He'll regret this," another said. But Daniel ignored them all, opening the passenger door. Solara climbed in awkwardly, looking at every object as though it was alien to her. The seatbelt confused her, the handle startled her. Even the cracked dashboard fascinated her glowing gaze. Daniel shut the door gently, as if sealing his choice. The drive home was silent. Solara sat stiffly, holding the broken device close to her chest. Her glowing eyes shifted between the dark road and Daniel's profile. Daniel gripped the wheel tightly, questions running wild in his head. Who was she? Where did she come from? Why had she waited under that sign? But he did not ask yet. He knew she needed rest more than answers at last. They arrived at his small house on the edge of town. It was old but neat, a lonely place that had once been full of warmth before his wife passed. Daniel parked the truck and opened the door for her. Solara stepped out slowly. Her bare feet touching the cool dirt, she looked around, her silver skin catching the faint light of the stars. Her lips parted in a small gasp, as if she had never seen such a quiet place. Inside, Daniel guided her to the kitchen. He placed bread, fruit, and water on the table. Solara sat hesitant, her glowing eyes fixed on the food. "Eat," Daniel said softly. For a moment she did not move. Then she reached out with trembling fingers. She took a small bite, and when the taste filled her mouth, her whole body shivered. Tears welled in her eyes, glowing faintly like liquid light. It was the first real food she had tasted in days, maybe longer. Daniel watched in silence, his chest tightening. He could see the exhaustion in her every movement, the scars along her arms, the weight she carried in her eyes. This was no conqueror, no monster. This was someone broken, someone running, someone who needed a home. When she finished, Solara looked at him, her voice a whisper. "Why, help?" she asked, the words heavy. Daniel leaned back in his chair, sighing softly. "Because no one else would," he said, his voice firm. "Because it's the right thing to do." Solara stared at him for a long time, her glowing eyes softening. Then slowly she bowed her head. "Daniel," she whispered, repeating his name as if testing its weight. It was the first time he realized she had listened to the whispers of the crowd, memorizing his name. And it was the first time in years he felt his lonely house begin to feel less empty. Outside, the night deepened, the town restless with whispers of what had just happened. Inside, a fragile trust had begun to form. But Daniel knew this was only the beginning. Taking her in was not just an act of kindness. It was the start of something much bigger, something that would put him against fear, against suspicion, and perhaps against enemies not of this world yet. As he looked at the exhausted woman sitting at his table, clutching her broken device like a lifeline, he knew one thing for certain. He had made his choice. And there was no turning back. Morning came slowly in the small town. The diner's neon sign flickered off, and the streets filled with the usual noise of engines, footsteps, and gossip, but this morning was different. The town had a new story to tell, and every mouth carried it like fire. "They saw him take her," whispered a woman at the bakery, handing coins for her bread. "A silver-skinned stranger?" Right into his truck. Her words spread, carried from one corner to another by noon. Everyone knew. Daniel had brought the alien woman home. At the grocery store, people leaned close. "She's dangerous," one man muttered. "She looked weak," another argued. "If she wanted to hurt us, she would have already." But fear drowned reason. They had never welcomed strangers easily, and Solara was no ordinary stranger. Children who had seen her beneath the sign boasted to their friends, "I saw her eyes glow blue." "Like fire," one boy said. "She's a witch," another replied. Wide-eyed, by afternoon, stories had already twisted into wild shapes. Some swore she had claws. Others claimed she could vanish into thin air. Every version made her sound less human and more monster. Meanwhile, in Daniel's small house at the edge of town, Solara sat at the kitchen table. Her glowing eyes scanned the walls, the shelves, the dusty photographs of Daniel and his late wife. Everything seemed strange and fragile to her. She touched objects gently as if afraid they might break. Her broken device sat beside her plate, its cracked screen flickering dimly. She tapped it, whispered words in a language Daniel did not understand. Then, frustrated, she placed it down. Daniel walked in, holding a mug of coffee. "You still trying with that thing?" he asked, nodding at the device. Solara looked up, her eyes soft. "Yes." "Not work," she said slowly. Struggling with the words, Daniel sat across from her. "Maybe I can take a look later," he offered. Her eyes widened slightly, surprised. Then she gave a faint nod. She did not smile, but her silence carried gratitude as the day stretched on. Daniel took her outside to the workshop. Engines sat on stands, tools scattered across benches. Solara's glowing eyes lit with interest. Daniel handed her a small wrench, curious. She studied it for a moment, then crouched beside an old generator. Her hands moved quickly, twisting, fitting, adjusting. Sparks flew, a hum echoed, and the machine roared back to life. Daniel blinked in disbelief. "Well, guess you know your way around machines." Solara tilted her head. "Machines? Easy," she said softly. For the first time, Daniel laughed, the sound startling even himself. But while they worked, whispers grew louder in town. At the diner, men leaned over their coffee. "She's in his house right now," one said with a grim frown. "Can you imagine what she's plotting?" Another muttered, "They should both be locked up before it's too late." The sheriff's deputy stopped by the mechanic shop in the afternoon, his boots crunching against the dirt. Daniel saw him before he spoke. "You keeping her here?" the deputy asked flatly. Daniel wiped grease from his hands. "She's not hurting anyone," he said firmly. "That's not the point," the deputy replied, glancing uneasily at Solara. "She doesn't belong here, Daniel. Folks are scared." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Folks are always scared of what they don't understand," he answered. The deputy sighed. "Just be careful," and walked away. Solara, who had understood only pieces of the exchange, turned to Daniel. "Bad?" she asked quietly. Daniel looked at her glowing eyes, the question heavy with worry. He shook his head slowly. "Not bad," he said. Though his voice carried doubt, she did not push. But the way her fingers tightened around the wrench showed she knew more than she let on. That night, Solara stood at the small window of the spare room Daniel had given her. The moonlight washed her silver skin, her glowing eyes reflecting the stars. Outside, she could see faint lights in the town, homes filled with warmth, voices, laughter. And yet, she knew whispers carried her name like poison through those same homes. Her hand pressed against the cold glass, and she whispered to herself in her own tongue, a language that sounded like music and sorrow mixed together. In the distance, Daniel sat at his kitchen table, staring at the old photograph of his wife. He rubbed the edge of the frame, then looked toward Solara's closed door. He could feel the weight of the town pressing against him already. But he remembered the look in her eyes when she ate her first meal in his kitchen, the tears that glowed like liquid stars. She was not a threat, not to him. She was someone who needed a chance, and he had given her one. No matter what the town believed, by the next morning, the whispers had turned sharper. Some wanted her gone. Others wanted to call the government. A few whispered of violent plans if Daniel refused. And while Daniel fixed engines in his shop, and Solara studied his tools like old friends, shadows were already gathering at the edge of their fragile peace. The town was divided and trouble was coming. The sun was already high when Daniel unlocked the door to his repair shop. The smell of oil and rust greeted him. Familiar and grounding, Solara followed quietly, her silver skin glowing faintly in the daylight. She carried herself with care, her glowing eyes scanning every corner as if memorizing the place. Daniel had been awake most of the night, thinking the town's whispers weighed heavy, and the deputy's warning echoed in his ears. But when he looked at Solara, silent, patient, eager to help, he felt something stronger than fear. He decided to test her, to see if she could truly work alongside him. "All right," Daniel said, pointing at the broken engine block on the table. "Let's see what you can do." Solara tilted her head. Stepping closer, her glowing eyes studied the metal, her fingers hovering above it like she was tracing invisible patterns. Daniel handed her a wrench, expecting hesitation, but her hands moved fast, steady, almost graceful. She turned bolts with strength that surprised him. She adjusted pieces with a precision no human could match. Within minutes, the engine that had sat dead for weeks gave a low, steady hum. Daniel's eyebrows rose. "Well, I'll be damned," he muttered. Solara straightened, wiping grease from her silver hands. She looked at him, her voice soft. "Good?" Daniel chuckled, shaking his head in disbelief. "Better than good," he said. For the first time, she gave a small smile, faint but real. By noon, customers arrived. At first, they hesitated when they saw Solara standing near the counter. Some froze, some stepped back, but Daniel's calm voice broke their fear. "She's helping me," he said firmly. The customers exchanged nervous glances, but one brave man asked, "Can she fix a carburetor?" Daniel glanced at Solara, who tilted her head. "Car-bur," she repeated slowly. Daniel guided her to the machine, showing the problem. Within moments, Solara's hands moved with startling skill. She tapped, tightened, and adjusted with strange techniques. When the carburetor sputtered back to life, the man's mouth dropped open. "She did that in less than 5 minutes," he muttered, disbelief mixing with awe. Word spread quickly. By evening, more people came, curious, half afraid, half desperate to see the alien woman work. One by one, they brought broken machines, generators, old radios, farming tools, and one by one, Solara fixed them with speed and skill that seemed impossible. Daniel stood by her side, his chest swelling with pride he didn't expect to feel. But while some customers left impressed, others left uneasy, muttering to themselves. "She's too good," one man said, "not natural." "She's hiding something," another whispered. At night, when the shop finally grew quiet, Daniel poured Solara a glass of water. She sat at the workbench, her silver skin streaked with grease. Her glowing eyes looked tired but satisfied. "You did good today," Daniel said. Sitting across from her, Solara tilted her head. "Good. Work?" she asked, her voice soft but hopeful. Daniel smiled faintly. "Yeah, real good." But outside, not everyone shared his feeling. At the diner, groups gathered, voices sharp with fear. "She's making him rich," one man spat. "She'll take over his shop, then the whole town," another warned. "They're blind if they can't see it," someone muttered darkly. And from the corner, a few men nodded, their faces grim. Plans were forming, whispers hardening into threats. The next day, Daniel noticed fewer friendly faces at the shop. Some customers left before even stepping inside. Others glared openly at Solara, their fear painted as anger. One woman sneered, "We don't need her kind here." Before storming out, Solara's glowing eyes followed her. Confused, hurt, Daniel clenched his fists, his voice hard when he muttered, "Ignore them." But Solara's silence told him she couldn't. For all her skill with machines, she could not fix the walls people built around their hearts. That night, as Daniel closed the shop, shadows moved near the edge of the street. 3 men stepped forward, their faces tight with anger. One carried a bat, another a chain. The third simply crossed his arms. "You need to send her away." "Daniel," the man with the bat growled. "She's not one of us. She never will be." Daniel stepped forward, blocking the door with his body. "She's not hurting anyone," he said firmly, his voice steady. "She's fixing things no one else can," the man sneered. "She's fixing her way into your home. Your life, soon the whole town." Daniel's jaw tightened. "You don't know her," he shot back. "We don't need to," the man snapped, gripping his bat tighter. "Get rid of her." or we'll make you regret it. Solara stood behind Daniel, silent, her glowing eyes wide. She understood enough. This was not about machines, not about work. This was fear, sharp and dangerous. Daniel didn't move, didn't back down. His voice was low but strong. You'll have to go through me first. The men exchanged glances, their anger burning, but they didn't step closer, not yet. One spat on the ground. You'll regret this, Daniel, he warned before they melted back into the shadows. When the door shut, Solara touched Daniel's arm gently. Her voice was barely a whisper. Danger. Daniel exhaled, his shoulders heavy. Yeah, he muttered. I know, but inside, his resolve grew stronger. Whatever danger came, he would not abandon her. Not now, not ever. The test was not just about machines anymore. It was about trust, and both of them had passed it. Even as the world outside turned against them. The night after the men came with threats. Daniel could not sleep. He sat by the window, staring at the quiet road, every sound of wind making him tense. His house felt different now, less like a safe shelter and more like a target. Solara sat in the spare room, the broken device glowing faintly on her lap. She pressed buttons, whispered in her strange language, but the machine stayed dead. Her glowing eyes dimmed with frustration, and Daniel could hear her soft sighs through the walls. By morning, the town felt colder. Neighbors who once greeted Daniel now turned their heads. Whispers followed him through the grocery aisles. Still keeping her? One man muttered loudly. Daniel ignored them, but he felt the weight of every stare pressing down on his back. At the shop, business slowed. Only a few brave customers came, curious enough to see Solara work. They left impressed, but their visits were short. Their words clipped. Fear had already dug deep roots in the town. That evening, when the tools were put away, Daniel found Solara sitting outside, her silver skin glowing under the fading sun. Her glowing eyes watched the horizon as if expecting something. Daniel sat beside her, folding his arms. You're waiting for something, aren't you? Solara turned to him slowly, her voice quiet. Yes, they come, Daniel frowned. They? Who's coming? She hesitated, her glowing eyes flickering with something between fear and sorrow. Finally, she whispered, Hunters. The word chilled him. Hunters? What kind? Daniel pressed. Solara looked away, her silver hair catching the last light of day. Not animals. Not humans, she said, struggling with the words. They take slaves. Daniel froze, the meaning sharp and heavy. She wasn't just lost, she was escaping, and the ones who wanted her back were not going to knock politely. His chest tightened. You're telling me they'll come here? To this town? Solara nodded, her voice breaking. Yes, if find me. Earth not safe. Daniel's stomach dropped. The town already hated her. If they knew what followed her, panic would tear everything apart. He rubbed his face, muttering, God help us. Solara touched his arm gently, her glowing eyes pleading. Hide. You safe, she whispered. But Daniel shook his head sharply. No, you're not running, he said firmly. I won't let them take you. That night the sky looked strange. Stars that had always been steady now flickered unnaturally. Daniel didn't notice at first, but Solara did. She stood at the window, her glowing eyes wide, whispering in her language. When Daniel stepped closer, she turned to him, her voice urgent. They near. The next morning the town buzzed with unease. A farmer swore he saw strange lights in the sky while working late. Another claimed his cattle scattered in terror at something moving above. The sheriff brushed it off as nonsense, but the fear spread faster than his calm words that evening. Daniel found himself facing another knock at his door. 3 townsmen stood outside again, their anger sharper. You've brought danger to all of us, one spat. You're hiding her when she should be turned over to the government, another growled. Daniel blocked the doorway, his jaw set. She's not a threat, he said. His voice hard, but the men only sneered. Not yet, one muttered darkly. But she will be. When they finally left, Solara stepped from the shadows, her glowing eyes full of sorrow. Your people hate me, she whispered. Daniel's chest ached, but he forced his voice steady. Not all of them. Not me. Later that night, Solara finally told him more. Her words were broken, but the meaning was clear. She had escaped from a ship, a vessel filled with slaves from many worlds. The hunters were soldiers, trackers, bound to bring her back or kill her trying. Her broken device was once a beacon, a call for help. But now it was only a flicker of light, powerless and cracked. "I only wanted free," she said. Tears glimmering in her glowing eyes, Daniel sat in silence, the weight of her truth pressing down. If the hunters came, the town wouldn't survive. But as he looked at Solara, fragile yet unbroken, he knew he could not turn her away. He clenched his fists, whispering, "Then we'll be ready for them." That same night, a faint hum filled the air. Daniel stepped outside, his heart hammering. The sky above the hills glowed faintly red. Like fire hiding behind clouds, Solara joined him, her voice trembling. "They hear." The shadows that haunted the edges of the town were no longer whispers of fear. They were real, closing in. The hunters had arrived. And the battle for trust, safety, and survival was about to begin. The hum grew louder as night swallowed the town. Daniel stood in his yard, his fists clenched, staring at the red glow creeping across the sky. It wasn't a storm, it wasn't lightning. Solara had been right. The hunters had arrived. Solara stood beside him, her silver skin shimmering in the moonlight. Her glowing eyes burned with fear and determination. "They come fast," she whispered, her voice shaking. Daniel nodded, his heart pounding. "Then we meet them here." The first ship broke through the clouds. It wasn't massive, but it was sharp and menacing. A black triangle of metal with red lights burning like eyes. It hovered above the fields just beyond the town, the air rumbling with its engines. Cattle scattered, dogs barked, windows rattled in their frames. The town woke in panic, lights flicking on one by one. Daniel grabbed his old shotgun from the closet. It wasn't much against alien metal, but it was all he had. Solara touched the weapon, tilting her head. Her voice soft, not strong, but brave. Daniel smirked grimly. "Brave is all we've got." When the ship landed in the fields, the earth trembled. A ramp hissed open, releasing smoke and a stench of burning metal. Figures emerged, tall, armored, their helmets shaped like beasts. They carried long spears that glowed at the tips, weapons humming with deadly energy. The hunters had come, and their glowing eyes scanned the town like predators seeking prey. Solara's breath caught. "4, she whispered, counting them as they stepped onto the ground. Daniel tightened his grip on the shotgun. "Stay behind me," he ordered. But Solara shook her head, her glowing eyes fierce. "I fight too," the hunters spoke in harsh tones, their voices metallic through the helmets. One raised a device scanning the area. A red beam swept across the fields and streets. Searching when it touched Solara, the device shrieked with sound. The hunters turned as one, locking onto her. Daniel fired the shotgun, the blast echoing through the night. The nearest hunter staggered back, sparks flying from its armor. The town erupted in screams as people peeked from windows. "What's happening?" Voices cried, but Daniel had no time to answer. The hunters charged, their glowing spears cutting through the air. Daniel fired again, knocking one to the ground. Solara raised her broken device and slammed it against the dirt. The cracked screen flared once, sending out a sharp pulse of blue light. The hunters froze for a split second, their helmets flickering. "Now!" Daniel shouted, pulling Solara toward cover. They ducked behind the workshop, bullets of red energy burning into the walls. Sparks and smoke filled the air. Solara grabbed a wrench from the bench, twisting it in her hands until it bent into a sharp blade. Daniel gawked. "You just made a weapon out of a wrench." Solara gave a faint smile. "Tools, same as weapons." One hunter rounded the corner. Its spear glowing, Daniel swung the shotgun like a club. Slamming it into the creature's helmet, it staggered, and Solara lunged, her improvised blade slicing across its chest plate. Sparks burst out. The hunter fell with a metallic groan. Daniel and Solara stood over it, their breathing heavy. But more footsteps echoed, heavy and relentless. The other hunters were closing in, their red eyes glowing in the dark. Solara pressed her glowing hand against the broken device. Forcing another blue pulse, the hunters staggered again, their armor buzzing with static. Daniel used the moment to fire, the blast shattering another's helmet. The creature collapsed, hissing its last breath. From the shadows of the street, townsfolk peeked out. They had never seen anything like it. Daniel and the alien woman fighting side by side. Some shouted warnings, others prayed. But one boy's voice rang out clear. "He's protecting her." The last two hunters regrouped, standing tall, their glowing spears raised. They barked words in their harsh language. Solara's glowing eyes widened. "They call ship. More come," Daniel swore under his breath. "Then we finish this fast," one charged. Swinging its spear down at Daniel, he rolled aside, the weapon slicing through wood and stone like paper. Solara darted forward, her blade catching the hunter's leg. Sending sparks flying, Daniel rose, slamming the butt of the shotgun into its helmet until it cracked. The hunter fell, twitching, smoke spilling from its armor. The last one roared. Its red spear blazing, it lunged at Solara, but Daniel grabbed it from behind, straining with all his strength. "Do it!" he shouted. Solara's glowing eyes flashed, her blade striking true into the hunter's chest. The creature let out a mechanical shriek before collapsing lifeless. Silence fell over the field, broken only by the hiss of the hunter's dying ship engines. Smoke curled into the night sky, the ground scarred with burns and blood. Daniel stood panting, his arms heavy, his shotgun smoking. Solara dropped her twisted blade, her glowing eyes shining with tears. "They stop. For now," she whispered. Her voice trembling, Daniel looked at her, then at the townsfolk gathering in the distance. Their faces pale with shock, he spoke low but firm. "This isn't over." The hunters were gone, but their ship still glowed red in the sky, and both Daniel and Solara knew this was only the first battle. The battlefield was quiet. The night smelled of smoke and metal, the field scarred by fire. Bodies of the fallen hunters lay broken, their red lights fading one by one. The ship that had brought them smoldered in the distance, its engines hissing with dying sparks. Daniel leaned on his shotgun, his chest heaving. Sweat and dust streaked his face, and every muscle ached. Beside him, Solara stood tall but trembling, her silver skin streaked with grease and blood. Her glowing eyes still burned, but tears glimmered in them, soft and fragile. The first townsfolk arrived slowly, gathering at the edges of the field. Some held lanterns, others clutched tools like weapons. At first they stood frozen, their eyes darting between Daniel, Solara, and the alien corpses scattered across the ground. They had never seen death like this, not from men, but from monsters that looked like nightmares. "She fought them," a man whispered. His voice breaking the silence, others murmured in agreement. Shock painted across their faces. "She saved us," a woman added, her voice softer, as if admitting something heavy. Children peeked from behind their parents, their eyes wide but no longer filled with fear. The sheriff arrived, his hat crooked, his gun drawn but unused. He stared at the wreckage, his mouth tight with disbelief. Finally, he looked at Daniel. "What in God's name happened here?" Daniel straightened, his voice rough but steady. "They came for her, and they'll come again." The sheriff glanced at Solara, then at the broken hunters. He said nothing, but his silence was louder than any denial. For days the town buzzed with talk. People who once feared Solara now whispered different words. "She fought to protect us, and she stood with Daniel. She saved children who would have been caught in that blast." Fear turned slowly into something else. Not full trust, but the beginning of respect. Solara stayed quiet through it all. She spent her mornings repairing machines at Daniel's shop, her afternoons helping repair the damage from the fight. Her glowing eyes softened whenever children approached her. No longer afraid, she even repaired a boy's broken toy, her silver hands working gently until it lit up with new life. The boy's laugh carried through the street and people watched with wide eyes. But not everyone was ready to forgive. Some still muttered darkly, warning that danger would follow her. Some wanted her gone, but their voices grew weaker each day, drowned out by the stories of how she fought, how she stood beside a human when she could have run. One evening, Daniel and Solara returned to the diner, the same place where she had first sat under the help wanted sign. Now the sign swung lightly in the breeze. Still faded, still creaking, Daniel pushed the door open, and silence fell inside. Every eye turned to them, waiting. For a moment, Daniel thought the old fear had returned, but then the cook behind the counter set down 2 plates, sliding one toward Solara. "On the house," he muttered gruffly. "For saving us," Solara blinked. Her glowing eyes wide, Daniel nudged her gently. "It means thank you," he whispered. Solara lowered her head, whispering softly, "Thank you." The whole diner seemed to exhale, the heavy silence melting into something lighter. It wasn't complete acceptance. Not yet, but it was the start that night. Solara stood outside Daniel's home, staring up at the stars. Her glowing eyes reflected the endless sky. Daniel stepped beside her, his hands in his pockets. "You're thinking about them, aren't you?" he asked quietly. Solara nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "More will come." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Then we'll be ready." She turned to him, searching his face. Why, still help me? Daniel looked at her, at the woman who had once been a stranger under a sign. You needed someone, he said simply, and I was there. Solara's glowing eyes softened. Tears glimmering again, she whispered. Daniel, safe, as if the word itself was a treasure. Days turned into weeks, and slowly the town began to change. People who once closed their doors now left bread on Daniel's porch. Children waved at Solara when she walked by. The whispers of fear became whispers of pride. She's one of us now, some said, though quietly. The old help wanted sign still hung outside the diner. But now when Solara walked past it, she did not look at it with desperation. She looked at it with hope, as if it had been a promise kept. No longer the sign of a stranger begging for safety, but the sign of where a new story had begun. On a quiet evening, Daniel and Solara sat on the porch, the crickets singing in the fields. She leaned against the railing, her silver skin glowing in the moonlight. Daniel leaned back in his chair, his shotgun resting nearby just in case. Think you'll ever stop fixing things? He asked with a smirk. Solara tilted her head, her glowing eyes soft. Always fix, she said. Her voice calm. Daniel chuckled. Guess that makes two of us. The hunters might return one day. The galaxy might not forget her escape, but for now, in that small town on Earth, an alien woman had found something stronger than fear. She had found trust, she had found a home, and Daniel knew whatever came next, they would face it together.